Want to say peace and blessings. Want to say shalom, lach, mashpacha. My name is Pastor Kelly Richardson. Many of you guys have been on the channel and have witnessed some of the teaching between Pastor Jerry Carr, the third, and myself. I know it's a little late, but I just thought I'd do a late night session here and start really kicking off using YouTube to go live. Been doing a lot of lives on Facebook, and but a lot of the videos, a lot of the teachings are being suppressed there. So I want to just go ahead and talk to you guys a little bit here. Just talk to you guys a little bit about the Passover. And my question is, do we really understand the Passover? Do we really understand the magnitude of the Passover? I mean, when we start really understanding the Passover, we'll come to the realization that every last one of us should be celebrating and honoring the Passover. And I believe that the Passover, the acknowledgement, the honor of the Passover has gotten lost, even among, many of our brothers and sisters that are teaching the truth. Even in the church, when you have the Eucharist and communion, that is not Passover. Those are things that were put together, put in place by Christianity to continue to water down and take something that never belonged to that belief system, and that's the heritage of the Negroes, which we are Israel. When I think about Judaism and all these major belief systems as far as Judaism, when we look at Catholicism, when we look at, of course, Catholicism, Christianity, Christendom, and then when we look at the Muslims, the commonality is every last one of them enslaved us. Every last one of these communities enslaved our people. Every last one of them. When we look at Roman Catholicism and you look at what took place in 1452, the first transaction of the transatlantic slave trade, who facilitated that? Cannot separate Christendom, which Christianity comes from Christendom. Can't separate Christendom or Christianity from Catholicism, which all enslaved our people. Then when we look at Judaism, when we look at the Jewish community as we know them, they owned slaves. They owned the slave ports. They were beneficiaries, or should I say, they really benefited from the enslavement of our people. The entire world benefited from our people. It's amazing when we start looking at the world wars, as far as with Germany and the world war with Japan. Notice how they all got labeled world wars, because a multitude of kingdoms had to come together with a common enemy. A common enemy. We had Japan as being a common enemy. We had Germany being a common enemy. But we've been so brainwashed, so institutionalized that when we look at the transatlantic slave trade, when we look at the Arabic slave trade, we don't view those as world wars. We don't view those as world wars. Why? We've been so institutionalized that even in our history books in schools, in the school system, we have to learn about the different world wars. But when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade, it's called a slave trade, but it's not referred to what it actually is. which is a world war that was posed, that was targeted to a particular demographics of people, and that's Negroes. The entire world benefited from this war. The entire world benefited from the enslavement of a people that just have a history of loving everybody, but took a heritage of a people, took what is called heritage, their land, family, tongues, and systematically interpolated every aspect of it, packaged it, and then fed it right back to us. To where as though we're protecting the constructs that was inserted into our belief system, not even knowing, not even realizing that the Bible that many of us rejected is our heritage, is our history book. So I just want to take a little time out tonight just to kind of do a quick recording, just do a little talk to you, real talk to you about the system, this system that is put in place to destroy our hope. The system of the entire world that has been put together to take the hope of a people. So let's talk about the Pasach. Let's talk about the Passover real quick. And then I'll highlight some historical things that have occurred with our people. Let's talk about the Passover. Now, I'm not going to put up all my presentations. I'm not going to put up PowerPoints. I'm going to upload a PowerPoint presentation with this entire lesson put together. But let's talk about the Passover. See, remember what I said, that I want to say shalom to you, Sister Felicia. I'm just up here late night, just doing a little recording while everyone is asleep, and, want to start getting more acclimated with utilizing YouTube. So I'm going to make a transition from Facebook to YouTube and really start utilizing this platform to really get this truth out. But when we understand the word Passover, let's just start with the word Pasach. That is the Hebrew pronunciation of the Passover. That is ancient Hebrew, Quadam Ibar. Quadam means ancient. Hebrew, of course, is Ibar. All right, so let's start with the first letter. The first letter of the Hebraic word Pasach, which many refer to as Passover, is what is called the Pa. All right, it is called the Pa. Now, the Pa looks like a side profile of a mouth wide open. All right, and that word means mouth, instructions. It means command. All right, so understand what's going on here, and I'm going to give you the scripture to back this up. Pa. One thing Yahweh Ha Mashiach said, that man should not live by bread alone, but by every word, dabar, every word, all, kal. That's the Hebrew word for all, kal, word, dabar, that proceeds out of the mouth, pi, of Yah. Now what Yahweh Shai is quoting, he's quoting from Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is what he's quoting. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2, verse 3, where, and actually you could just really go even further with that. All right. So it's interesting that there you see 40 years, right? Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy is a series of sermons, a series of messages as Moses is getting ready to encourage the people, as he's encouraging the people, rather, as they're getting ready to transition over to the promised land. After 40 years of going around in circles, after 40 years of being in this wilderness, Madabar, in this wilderness, whereas though they had to what? Endure the older generation dying off until the Most High said it was ready. It was time for them to move forward. 40, the number 40. What's interesting about the number 40 is that is the numerical value of the word or the letter Mayam, which means water. We'll deal with that a little bit later. So when you understand what was happening in Deuteronomy, Moses is giving this new generation that is being led by Joshua and Caleb to go into the promised land. But he gave them a series of instructions on either they can prosper or they can turn that blessing into a curse. And that's where you get into Deuteronomy chapter 28, for example, the blessings, right? And the curses, which is interesting, is you see 3 times as many curses as you see blessings. Why? Because the Most High wanted to put what? The point of emphasis to really reiterate the importance of what it means to be obedient and what he's getting ready to what? Release to his people. So that's why it's so important to really understand. So that first letter, Pa, it means mouth, instructions, command. Then we get to the next letter, which is the Samach, right? It makes the Sa sound. It means to lean on. It means to support. It means to take hold. It means thorn. So when you understand this letter and you combine it with the Pa, that the word, every word, all the word of Yah, we are supposed to what? Allow that to be our support system. That is supposed to be our support system. That is supposed to allow us to what? To lean on, to be completely dependent on, and tying into the first letter Pi. Man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yah. So the Samach. So we did the Pa, which means mouth. Samach means to support, lean on, all right, take hold. Then we have the last letter, right, which is the Ka, which is wall, divide, right? That's what it means, wall, divide. So when you start understanding when this whole word here, Pasach, right? The first letter is telling us to be totally dependent on what? The words, the instructions of the Most High, the commandments. For us to be what? Completely what? Dependent on the commandments. And the second letter is telling us what? To make sure that all the word, all the Dabar HaQuadash, I want to say shalom to Al-Qaeda. I want to appreciate you tuning in as well. I want to say shalom to you. Shalom lock to you. I hope it's well with you. It is well with you. So shalom means it is well. Shalom lock means it is well. Shalom deals with the health, the well-being, and shalom deals with the place. You know, like Jerusalem is a place, or the heart is a place. So I want to say peace and blessings to you guys that are tuning in. I want to say shalom to Jason Oliver as well. So getting back to my point here. So you have the Pa, you have the Sa, and you have the Ka. So with that being said, when you're obedient to all the instructions of the Most High Yah, his law, statutes, and commandments, the statutes, that simply means how to carry out the law. So he's given us the commandments, and he's given us how to make it practical for us to understand how to carry them out. And then we tie it in with understanding that his word is to be what? Our support system. And that will what? Draw a line. That will what? Put a difference between what's holy and unholy, clean and unclean, which thus I'm quoting from Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10. All right. So now with that being said, when you look up the word Passover, right? It means what? It means Passover, right? It means to, basically be free from judgment. It means to spare. It means to skip over. It means to hesitate. It means to halt. So when you understand that we are obedient to what? All the words that comes out of the mouth of the Most High, guess what? And we allow the words to be our support system, and we'll come to understand that it will cause a divide. So therefore we'll be what? On the right side of his judgment. The right side of his judgment. Notice what I said, the right side of his judgment. Because he's coming back to judge. And the Passover, Pasach, is reminding us of what? The judgment and the instructions that we were given to what? Be able to what? Be on the right side of this judgment. All right? So Pasach means to hop. It means skip. It means to spare. It means to hesitate. So guess what? Every Negro should be honoring the Passover, the Pasach. And I'm going to get to that point here. So again, each letter, as I explained to you, each letter that I explained to you is key to understanding the Passover. All right. So the question is, what is the Passover? What is the Pasach? You know, because I really believe that most truly don't understand the significance of the Pasach, what it means to us, what it means to our people, what it means as Negroes who are descendants, who are prisoners of war. I'm not just going to say descendants of slaves, but we are what? Prisoners of war. Why? Because we are in a country that's not even ours. We were kidnapped. Our ancestors were kidnapped. They were enslaved. They were murdered. They were raped. They were everything you could ever imagine by every country, and we are the descendants of them. So think about that. Let's talk about this some more. So what is the Passover? What is the Passover? What is the Pasach? The Pasach involves both the judgment and the deliverance of the Most High. It involves the judgment and also the deliverance of the Most High Yah for his people. Pass judgment on what? A country, a kingdom that enslaved his people, brought judgment to them, but also to deliver his people out of what? The bondage, the grips, the hands of what? The oppressors. All right. So the Passover, Pasach, is without question one of the most significant days in Israel's history. Yashara'al. One of the most significant days in Israel's history. Yadai, knowledge, history. Yadai. One of the most significant days, right? It's so significant that Yahushai, HaMashiach, and his disciples, Lamad, honored this historical bookmark in our history. It's that significant. It is that significant, right? So did Christ honor the Pasach? Absolutely. Absolutely. And see, here's some scriptures that you can, for some of you guys that may have some family that is under the doctrine of Christianity, they're in the church but really don't understand or really don't believe that Christ honored the Passover, because right now in their mind, when they look at communion, the Last Supper or the Lord's Supper, guess what? They are what? They've been rewired to what? Understanding what, or being what, in tune with the communion versus the Pasach. Totally different. Totally different. All right. And we're going to deal with some of that. All right. So here's one scripture here. Biblical confirmation. Luke chapter 4, verse 15 and 16. It reads, and he taught, this is referring to Yahushai, right? That's right. Brother Jason Oliver. Yeah. To reestablish, right? Like you just pointed out, put us right back where? Under the order, right? Darak, right? Which is the Hebrew word for manner, order, back under the order of Balak Tazadak or Melchizedek, to put us back under the order, restore. All right. Not doing something new, but taking us what? Back under what? The order of Melchizedek, Malak Tazadak, right? So nevertheless, great post. And you're right, you're spot on with that. So Luke 4:15 says this, and he taught in their synagogue, right? The actual word assembly that's there, the Hebrew word is quahal, all right? So, and he taught in their quahal, be glorified, kabod, of all. Let me read it again. And he taught in their synagogues, quahal, being glorified, kabod, of all. All right, verse 16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, as his customs was, and he went into the synagogue, quahal, on the Shabbat day, right? And stood up, quam, for to read. Let me read that again. And he came, this is referring to Yahweh Shai, came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up and as his custom, Mawar Rasha, or Mawar Shah, which means heritage, was, he went into the synagogue, quahal, on the Shabbat, all right, day, and stood up, quam, for to read. Stood up to read, all right? So we see that what? Christ, right? He went, that was part of his custom. That was part of his what? Heritage, what? To honor all the feast days, including what? The Shabbat. Okay, now let's get some more scripture here, because I don't want to lose focus here, but let's go to Luke chapter 2, verse 41 and 42, right? Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast, Chag, of the Passover, Pasach. Now we see that what? Joseph and Mary, it says here, every year. Because when you read Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16 and 17, you see the three major feasts that are listed there, that every year, every male is required to bring his family to Jerusalem to honor the Pasach. All right? So, verse 42, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom, Mawar Shah, of the feast, Chag. So every year, right? Every year, Joseph, Mary, along with Yahweh Shai, they honored the Pasach, right? And of course, they had additional children. So of course, they, as a family, they went out, they honored the Passover. All right. So let me give you some more understanding here. Did Christ and his disciples honor the Passover? Absolutely. Matthew chapter 26, verse 17 and 18. It reads, now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples, lamad, the Hebrew word for disciple is lamad. What's interesting, right, is that is also the letter of the Aleph, or the Aleph Bayath. Some will say Aleph Bet, but Aleph Bayath, right? The Hebrew letters, right? It means support. It means staff. It means learned, all right? And that's the definition of what? A disciple. So it's, even in the letters, guess what? It's reminding us of what? The importance of being what? A disciple. So nevertheless, now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples, lamad, came to Yahweh Shai, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover, Pasach? Now understand, right? This Passover celebration, Pasach, right? You see, they're looking for a place to what? Celebrate it. That's key here. Now, of course, they had a corporate gathering, but here, when you really understand the Passover, we're going to deal with that, Pasach, they're looking for a house. So that way they could come together for us, the disciples, along, with Yahweh Shai, and they can have what? They can bring the Passover, the Pasach, in together inside what? This household, this house. All right, Bayath. Okay. So verse 18, and he said, go into the city to such a man and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep shamar, That's the Hebrew word for keep, shamar. Shamar is what? To watch. Shamar is to keep, and also what? To listen. So shamar, the Passover, Pasach, at thy house with my disciples, lamad. So they're coming together to what? To congregate or to assemble themselves where? Inside a house. All right. So nevertheless, let's fast forward here. Let's go to another scripture here. Because I just proved to you that the disciples honored the Pasach, the Passover. Did Apostle Paul honor the Passover? Absolutely. Let's go to Acts chapter 18, verse 21. And this is what it says. It says, but bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep. There we have it again. Keep, shamar, this feast, Chag, that cometh into Jerusalem, but I will return again unto you if Yahweh will. And he sailed from Ephesus. All right. So then let me give you more clarity, because not only did Apostle Paul honor the Passover, Pasach, but I'm going to prove to you that the assemblies honored it. Now, many will use the term church. I don't use the word church because church is a Celtic word. It's a Celtic word. It means circle, right? That is the name of actually where you see the Stonehenge. That is a Celtic church. That's called a church because their place of worship is circular, right? The Celtics, the Druids, they did sacrifices and all kinds of rituals there. So church is not a translation of Quahal. Quahal means what? It's dealing with the people, assembly, right? Adath is congregation, right? Well, transliterates to congregation, but it actually means witnesses. So assembly of witnesses, all right? But just for the sake of those that may be watching this for the first time and really truly don't understand Hebrew, so for the sake of that, I'm just going to use the term church, but I'm going to make sure I use the actual Hebrew, but transliterate it to church, or I'll just say assembly. So here, the early assembly, which many will say the church of Corinth, guess what? They honored the Passover. Let me give you proof. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 and 8. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened, for even Christ, Hamashiach, our what? Pasach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. But he didn't stop there. Verse 8. Therefore let us keep Shamar, the feast, Chag, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So Apostle Paul is placing what? The point of emphasis with what? A changed heart. And that's what we have to understand even when we dealing with the renewing of the covenant, right? The renewing of the covenant. Karash, right? Karash means renew, refresh, all right? But nevertheless, let's move forward here. So let us keep Shamar. That's what the Apostle Paul said. The feast, Chag. So now I want you to really grasp the magnitude, really get a full understanding of the magnitude of what Yah was doing in this Passover, what he was really doing. What did he do during the Passover? Let's deal with it real quick, right? Yah had a plan to save and deliver his people, all of his people. Yah had a plan to judge the evil and brutal Egyptians while protecting his people from every one of them. Then also number 3, Yah had a plan to show the importance of the blood of the Passover lamb. And lastly, Yah had a plan in place for what? Repentance, for forgiveness. Because guess what? We're seeing what? The blood of the lamb being what? The blood being shed because Israel still needed to repent. Because Israel went into idol worshiping. While they were in Egypt, they were worshiping idols. We'll deal with that another time. But to get a little reference and get an understanding of that, Remember, Israel was out when they were delivered. While they was in transition, they built what? A golden calf when Moses went up into the mountain with the Most High. Joshua was, was kind of like at the midway point, but he went up. He was gone for about 40 days, and the people got impatient. So what did? They built a golden calf, right? So they built a god, and they created their own what? Holiday. They created their own holy day and put Yah's name on it. Sounds familiar, right? Many, when you look at the church, Christianity and Catholicism, and, you see how they put their own names on things. And actually, if you understand Judaism, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. All right. But nevertheless, Yah have a plan for forgiveness of every sin, and that how he sacrificed his son, Yahweh Shai Mashiach, to be what? To take all the burdens of our what? Shortcomings on his shoulders. All right, to become what? That Passover, Pasach lamb for us, as Apostle Paul pointed out. All right. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. Let's highlight that real quick. And the Lord, Yahweh, spake Amar unto Moses, Mashah, and Aaron, Aharon, in the land of Egypt, saying, this month, Kadash, right? This month, Kadash, shall be unto you, you, the beginning of months. It shall be the first Ra'ashawan month, Kadash, of the year, Shana, to you. So the Most High is saying this month, this time, this moment, right, is going to be a new beginning. It's going to be a new start. It's going to be what? It's going to be the new year for Israel. He's what? Changing time now. He's redefining the time. He's saying to you, this calendar change is going to be what? It's going to be specifically for you. The Egyptians have their calendar. The Sumerians have their calendars. But he's saying what? For you, you have your own calendar. Your new year starts right now. Powerful. He said, it shall be the first month of the year to you. All right. Let's go a little further here. All right. So the Passover, Pasach, is one of the most significant events in Israel's history, so significant that Yah used it to change the very calendar of Israel, like I pointed out. All right. So the Passover, Pasach, is an event that is different from all other events in the history of Israel. It's different from all the other events. Again, so different that Yahweh Shai honored it. All right. It marked the very night when Yah delivered his people. The very night judgment came and Yah delivered his people. Judgment came, but Yah delivered his people. It marked the very very night, the very time where when the Most High had delivered his people out of the grips, out of the claws of the Egyptians. All right, so let's deal with this some more. Let's deal with this word Exodus real quick, because many people truly don't understand what the word Exodus means. Now, in Christianity, especially when you study and you go into the seminaries. I went to the seminaries and, been there and done that. So what many pastors will teach is that Exodus is what? It means new beginning. But that's not what it means. Exodus does not mean new beginning, even though we know that there is a shifting that's taken place because the transition of Israel, right, went into Egypt and they strayed away. But we'll deal with that. So Exodus, the Hebrew word, the ancient Hebrew word, Quadam Ibar, is Sham Wath. 2 words, Sham Wath. Right? Sham it means name, and we'll define that real quick. And then Wath is the feminine plural of this, right? So Exodus from Egypt marked a whole new way of life for Yah's people, a shift, a change. All right, let's deal with this real quick. Let's deal with each letter. The first letter, you have what is called the Shah. The Shah means teeth. It means tool. Then you have the Ma, which means water, sea. And remember, the numerical value is 40. All right. Mayam. Right. So that first word, Sham. Then we have Wath. Right. Wath is the feminine plural. The Wa, right, means tent, peg, hook, secure. And then the last letter, Tha, means what? Sign, mark, evidence. So we see Sham, right? Sham means reputation. It means report, right? It means glory, okay? So Sham, the reputation, the name, the reputation of Israel. Remember, their reputation is associated and connected to who? Yahweh Elohim, right? It's referred to who? The Most High Yah, right? And of course, Yahweh Shai Ha Mashayak, as well as the Holy Spirit. So remember, Psalms, I believe the 83rd book of Psalms tells us about how the whole world, right, dealing with a world war there, right, it says 10 nations, right? It's 10 nations listed there that are going to what? Come against who? Israel. It said they're going to make out a tumult. A tumult, right, simply means a war cry. They're going to let out a war cry to do what? To erase, to change the reputation, Hasham, of Israel being dependent on the Most High Yah, the relationship with the Most High Yah, the culture, right? The culture, Abad, culture of Israel, right? Of being what? Solely dependent on the Most High Yah. They're going to shift and change all of that. Change the whole reputation, eliminate it, destroy it. All right? Destroy what? Their name. So, Sham Wath. All right? So, nevertheless, the Hebrew word Sham Wath is the feminine plurality of the Hebrew word name, right? You hear the term Hasham. It simply means the name, Hasham, right? It simply means the name. That is not the name of the Most High, Hasham. It just means the name or reputation, or you can take it as the literal name, or you can take it as the reputation, all right? So, again, the word Sham means honor, authority, character, fame, renown, report, okay? So, again, when you tie all of this together, Exodus means the names, and it's referring to what? All of Israel, not just the men, but all of Israel. Their literal name, but also what? Their reputation, all right? Their fame, their glory, you know, and tying it into who? The Most High, all right? Exodus 1:1. Let's go there real quick. Now these are the names, Sham, Wath. Now understand, when you understand the books of the Bible, let's just deal with we're in Exodus right now. When you see the names, right, the names of each book, each name is a reflection of the first sentence or the first couple of words of the sentence of the first chapter, the first verse. As I pointed out to you, where you see here, now these are what? The names, Sham, Wath, of the children of Israel. Sham, Wath is what? It means Exodus, right? It transliterates to the word Exodus. All right, so the books of the Bible, when you understand that, the first line generally is where the name comes from. All right, so now these are the names, Sham, Wath, of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. All right. So a key point I want to highlight is Exodus 1:7. Key point I want to highlight. All right. And the children, Banai, of Israel were fruitful, para, and increased abundantly, Sharatazah, or Sharat, and multiply, Rabbah, and waxed exceeding, Ma'ad, mighty, Atazam, and the land was filled with them. So now we see Israel, what is growing. They are growing, right? So the scripture says increased and multiplied, Rabbah, and waxed exceeding, Ma'ad, mighty, said that they were mighty. All right, so let me give you a little point of reference. Let me give you some understanding of the craniums, right? Let me give you a significant piece of literature that's going to further confirm just what we just read, right? Let me go back here. It tells us that the Israelites, right? Verse 7, it says, it tells us that the Israelites, actually verse 7, it says, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly, or exceeding rather, mighty, and the land was filled with them. So Israel went from 70 to, a huge number, very large multitude. So let's go to Crania Aegyptica, right? This is by Samuel George Morton, right? Page 66, right? Let me read a little reference from him. And this was written back in I believe this was 1844, right? Let me give you a little information here. Let me read what he says about the Negroes, right? This is going to just make a note of this, or matter of fact, hopefully, there's no issues with the videos and you can go back and revisit this here. All right, so let's see what it says here. Let's see what it says here. All right. It says here. Let me pull it up here. All right, here we go. Yeah. Page 66. This is what it says. Negroes. I'm just reading some of the bullets because it's a lot in this information. And I'm going to tell you, he was a racist. So even though he's a racist, but it's some good information to pull out of it. And these are a couple of things that I pulled out of it. Now, with that being said, he's a racist. Why? Because he used the cranium, right? Because he took 750 skulls or craniums from the catacombs of Egypt, and he's performed these studies on it, which still haven't been refuted, right, in terms of this portion of it. But the racial side of it, excuse me, he basically was determining by the cranium the aptitude of different groups of people. All right. And he had us at the low, second to the lowest of the totem pole. So, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on these bullets right here. Now, let me read it to you here. It says, Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it is now, or now is, that of servants and slaves. Let me read it again. Remember, I just read to you how it says in the scriptures how the Israelites multiplied. They was like numerous. They was all through the land. So here he says Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it is now, or it now is, that of servants and slaves. This is coming from another page inside his book. Let's see here, another bullet here. Let me get back to it. All right, this is page 60. He says, it will follow that upwards of 10 million of Negroes have been brought as bondsmen into Egypt. Bondsmen, abada, that's the Hebrew word for bondsman, abada. All right, but he says here, 10 million Negroes. All right, so he makes it clear. Let me read the other bullet again. Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it is, or that it now is, that of servants and slaves. So I just gave you some historical, archaeological, or should I say, cranium from that perspective. Let me put it that way. It gave you some information based upon the cranium, some things that's some tangible items to further confirm who we are, that you can kind of use that to explain to those that's trying to doubt who we are. All right. But nevertheless, the Hebrew word ma'ad means to exceed, abundance, louder. So not only are they growing, but guess what? They're getting stronger. They're getting stronger. They're getting powerful. Their voice is strong. All right. So this great increase of Israel is the fulfillment of Yah's great promise to Abraham. Right. So this is actually fulfilling the promise that Yah made to Abraham about his seeds. Right. And how they're going to what? Grow. How we're going to be what? We're going to be, he said, as the stars, as the sands, we're going to grow. We're going to multiply. All right. So Israel were not only growing strong in numbers, their potential became a threat. Do you know that's part of the issue right now? Not only are we growing strong in numbers, but our potential is causing a threat. Our potential, what is that? What is the potential of us coming to the understanding of knowing who we are, knowing our heritage, and then what? Protecting it. So the system of man has to do whatever it can to what? Keep us from coming to this understanding. So this is why we have, the different things that are being put out there as far as referring to us as identity extremists and some of the other names that are out there. All right. So verse 15, Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew Ibar midwives, Yalad, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, all right, which is Shapara, and the name of the other Puah, which is Pawaiah, all right. So that's their names in Hebrew. Shiphrah, which is Shapara, and the other Puah, which is Pawaiah, all right. Those are the two names. But the key is he got two women from our own community, Hebrew midwives. So basically he literally, the system literally decided that, hey, instead of using their people, they want to use our own people to what? Kill off, to participate in this genocide of our own community. All right. So verse 16, and he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, in other words, sitting there right there as they're giving birth, if it be a son, ban yam, then ye shall kill moth him. In other words, kill, destroy. But if it be a daughter, bath, then she shall live. Kaya. All right, so you see the instructions here. I'm going to close out with this final point, and I'll jump back on tomorrow night, and we'll go live again on YouTube. I'll start making this my new home. We're going live, but let's close out with this final point. All right, New York passes law allowing abortions anytime. All right, let me pull up the article here. All right, so according to, all right, let me pull up the entire article here for us to the subject here. New York passes law allowing abortions at any time if mother's health is at risk. All right, it says the new law signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo on Tuesday safeguards rights laid out in Roe v. Wade, or Roe versus Wade, and other court rulings, including a provision permitting late-term abortions when a woman's health is endangered. Let me give you some key points here. The new law moves the section of state law dealing with abortion in the penal code to health statutes. It also authorizes midwives. Here's a key part of this bullet. It said it also authorizes who? Midwives and physician assistants to perform some abortions. Whoa, let me read it again. It said it also authorizes midwives and physician assistants to perform some abortions. All right? Sounds familiar, right? We just read this, right? We just read this in Exodus, okay? So according to New York State Department of Health, 285,127 induced abortions occur in the state between 2012 and 2014. The average number of live births for the same 3 years was 237,499. So from that period, it was almost 50,000 more, basically 48,000 more abortions than it was births, actual live births during this time. That's a lot of abortions. All right. So again, the new law. Let's see here, Jason Oliver. The elites have always known who is. They study your book. Exactly. You're hitting it right on the nail, brother. You're hitting it right on the nail. All right. So again, let me reiterate this point. New law moves the section of state law dealing with abortion, from the penal code to health statutes. It also authorizes midwives, as I pointed out, to carry out abortions. All right, so let's deal with Planned Parenthood real quick, because I want to deal with that, and I'm going to tie it in with some additional numbers, and then we'll pick up where we left off tomorrow night. All right, so Planned Parenthood, founded on racism, belief in protecting society against the unfit. All right, this is coming from the Washington Times. All right, I believe in giving references. I believe in not just giving you information, but making sure I give you references to it, whatever information I present to you. All right, so Washington Times, Planned Parenthood, founded on racism, belief in protecting society against the unfit. Here's some bullets from there. Minorities cramped into impoverished areas in inner cities should not be having babies, or should not be having so many babies. And of course, these minorities, including most of American immigrants, are inferior in the human race and are physically and mentally handicapped. We should require mandatory sterilization of those less desirable. Let me read it again. Minorities cramped into impoverished areas in inner cities should not be having so many babies. And of course, these minorities, including most of America's immigrants, are inferior in the human race. And it says, as are the physically and mentally handicapped. So they're saying that all the Negroes, right, and also most, they didn't say all immigrants, they said most immigrants, they view as being what? Inferior. Thus, we get into the institution of race. It says, as are physically and mentally handicapped. In other words, those with disabilities, guess what? They are less than as well. All right. And those are some of the key points that is manipulated for what? Women to go through with what? Abortions. All right. But nevertheless, it says that we should require mandatory sterilizations. She says here, we should require mandatory sterilizations of those less desirable. All right. She goes on to say this, and promote easy access to abortion. But here's another key point. And since sex should be a free-for-all, in other words, everything goes. Sex should be a free-for-all. We're seeing that in our media. We're seeing it in the movies. We're seeing it in the cartoons. We're seeing it in advertisements. We're seeing it everywhere, all around us, a free-for-all far as in terms of sex. So she says, and since sex should be a free-for-all, we must provide birth control and abortions to teenagers too. It's all for the greater good, for a more intelligent, liberated, healthier population. In other words, the elite. That's what it's saying here. That's exactly what it's saying here. Okay, another reference. Actually, let me just reiterate a point here before I move on. Again, and a matter of fact, the founder of Planned Parenthood is Margaret Sanger. She's the founder of Planned Parenthood. That's what I'm referring to. These minorities are inferior in the human race, as are the physically and mentally handicapped. We should require mandatory sterilizations of those less desirable. And if you studied what's going over in Israel, right, the modern Israel, when you understand the law of return, which is called Aliyah, right, that was implemented, I believe, if I remember correctly, 1948, either 1947 or 1948. That is called the law of return. So this is supposedly for all the Jewish people, right, as we know it, right, to return to Israel. But if we really understand history, right, they're not returning. They're actually what? Going on a pilgrimage, right? They're relocating, all right? Because we already know that the people that are in Israel right now, they are Ashkenazis. They are Ashkenaz, and we'll deal with that another time. So when you understand this, right, you start understanding what's happening in Israel right now, right? And it's a major story. You can look it up. The Ethiopian Hebrews, right, kind of threw a monkey wrench on the law of return, right? Because they, I want to say in the early 80s, they was discovered. They want to come back to Israel, right? And they had a a Torah that they honored, or a full Torah. And so that kind of threw a monkey wrench in there. So what happened, right? What happened is the children of Israel, the Jewish community as we know them, they began to what? Give the women shots. I can't remember the name of the drug, but basically they began to sterilize the women with a drug. So this raised a red flag because when they began to take the census, they noticed that, and like every community, you're supposed to have some level of growth, increase over the years. But instead of them increasing, their numbers were decreasing, which posed a question and caused and triggered an investigation. And come to find out, they were giving drugs to every one of them that was coming in, that was returning. It was giving them these drugs that was making them sterile, so they could not what? Reproduce. Look it up. All right, I'm not making this up here. All right. So with that being said, okay, let's deal with another piece of history, or deal with some statistics here. All right. Abort73.com. Some stats here I want to run by you here. Okay. In America today, the average black woman is almost 5 times more likely to have an abortion than the average white woman. Part of this disparity owes to the fact that statistically, black women get pregnant more frequent than the white women. But even if we control for pregnancy, black babies are still more than 3 times more likely to be aborted than the white counterparts. No matter what your opinion of abortion, the fact that it disproportionately eliminates members of the minority community is a significant sociological problem. According to the latest census data, just over 12% of the U.S. population is black. Now, think about that. Just 12% of the overall population is 12%. Population is Negroes. And yet, somewhere between 28 to 36% of all 2014 abortions were performed on black babies. So that's a very high number. So 12%, but it's saying between 28 to 36% of all abortions came from the 12% of the people. That's a very alarming rate. All right. So with that being said, so abortions were performed on black babies. So Guttmacher Institute puts that number at 28% based on the voluntary survey of 8,380 respondents. The Center for Disease Control, CDC, places the number at 36%. So that's why they put a range 28 to 36%, right? Based on actual counts of every abortion performed in the 30 states districts that collect and report abortion data by race. By comparison, non-Hispanic white women make up 61% of the population, but account for only 38 to 39% of all abortions. So you see how the numbers are extremely high among the Negro community. It goes on to say, among black women, the current abortion ratio is 391.8. That means there are 391 abortions for every 1,000 births. So for every 1,000 births, there's 391 abortions, and that's not counting miscarriages. All right. So among white women, the abortion ratio is 121 to 1,000, which is what? 11%. But with the Negro community, it's 30%. 30%. A third. That's very significant. That's a huge number. Really, any abortion is a huge number. All right. So let's get back to this point. And the point that I want to make here about Moses. Let me bring that home here. Moses, Masha, was born during a time of massive suicide. I'll say it again. Moses was born during a time of massive suicide. I mean, not suicide, but genocide, excuse me. He was born during a time of massive genocide, which we see playing out today. A massive genocide, all right? You have abortion. You have the diets of, the food that is being sent to poor communities. And normally for the most part it's South Side. South Side in just about every city is the poor community who lives in that side of town. So it's a fact that the quality of foods is not the same in South Side in our communities. It's a fact. The meats are not the same quality. The milk is not the same quality. The cereal, all those things are not the same quality. All right, and you can look it up. You're seeing that even among our community, there are cancers, there are diseases that at one time was not even part of our community. Look it up. Believe it or not, tuberculosis at one time we were immune to it, but when we start eating things that's not that's not for the body, especially when you start understanding what took place at the transatlantic slave trade. You start understanding that many of the diseases we began to now our immune system began to be compromised. All right. So Moses, Mashah, was born during a time of a massive genocide. So the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew Ibar midwives, Yalad, right? Midwife. It simply means someone, a woman that's assisting another woman in childbirth. It says a woman who assists women in childbirth. But in this case, it was part of the same community. So a midwife is a woman who assists women in childbirth. And I'm here to tell you, guess what? Deception, for the most part, always look like you. The deception is always a reflection of you. What I mean by that? Guess what? Whenever I was, when a lot of the stuff that I indulged in as a young person didn't come from a stranger. It came from someone I knew. Many of the stuff I got introduced to, drinking and all that other stuff, was introduced by family members. So in many cases, the deception, the strongholds that you're dealing with did not come from a stranger. It came from within the community, your own community, from the people that you know. All right. So a midwife, guess what? From the community is a woman who assists women in childbirth. Okay. Let me see here. So kill. All right, that's what I want to deal with, that word kill. Kill. All right, kill. That's what the Hebrew midwives were tasked to do. The Hebrew women, Yalad, were given instructions by the government, the Egyptian government. If their blood relatives gave birth to a son, then destroy him. Moth, destroy. So again, if their Hebrew blood relatives gave birth to a son, completely destroy him. Kill, moth, means to get rid of, put an end to, cause the failure, defeat of something, to completely destroy. All right? Murder, ratazak, is the crime of unlawfully killing a person. Do you know when you're at war, there's no such thing as unlawfully killing someone when you're going against the enemy? But for some reason, we still look at, right now, we think that we're not at war. Guess what? We are at war right now. We're at an all-out war. What do I mean by that? You have systems that are in place that want to kill anyone that wants to oppose that system. In the military, right, there's a term called friendly fire. In other words, that's mishaps that happens when someone kills their own person, through accidents or whatever the case may be. There's nothing friendly getting killed by your own, right? But nevertheless, that's what we see happening, right? In terms of the midwives being told to kill their own, but then also we have to understand in war, there's no such thing as friendly fire. Now in war, right, friendly fire is basically murdering, innocently, murder someone, but when you understand kill, murder, no, there's no such thing as that when you're at war. That's the point I want to make here. So First Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, as a, not the lion, but as a, characteristics of the lion, walketh halak, about seeking bakwash, whom he may devour." Akal. Let me read it again. Be sober, batak, be vigilant, ashamaroth, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh halak, about seeking bakwash, whom he may devour. Akal. All right, so the king ordered the two supervising midwives to actually see that all the baby boys were killed at birth while they were sitting still. While they were sitting on the stool. All right, while they're giving birth. All right, so they were ordered to kill all boys under 2 years of age without their mothers knowing it. That's the key. Without the mothers knowing it. The mothers were to be deceived into thinking that complications occurred during giving birth is what killed their sons, because understand the position that they're in. And then when you understand the Near East, when you start understanding how things were back at that time, see, when we start understanding slavery at that time, the men were, they were out. They were basically at a separate location when they go out to build buildings and build cities. So they at that location. They're camped out there. So they're not with their women when they are having these babies. Because guess what? Any man, if you see that someone is trying to kill your seed, you're going to be defensive of it. But you see that the men are not there. That's parallel to what we see happening today. There's a division. There's an attack on the institution of family, to where as though the father is not in the picture. Child support. Guess what? They really don't care about the relationship between the father and the child. Long as resources are funneling and filtering through the system, they get escrow off of that. They make money off of that, interest off of that. All right. So again, wrapping this up. So with that being said, the Most High used a key person, and that is Moses, Masha. All right. So I'm going to stop right here, and we'll pick up tomorrow night. I went a little longer than what I wanted. It's almost 2:30, and I got to get up in a few hours. Got some things I got to do in the morning. But I hope this really blesses you guys. I hope this really blesses you. And if you have any questions, post it in the timeline. Share this video with others that want to get clarity on what the Passover is. I'll be back online, and we're going to take it even further. And I'm going to deal with a lot of the systems that are out there. All right, and we'll tie it into the Passover, because every last one of us should be honoring the Passover, the Pasach, the Passover. Guess what? Every last one of us, the Most High had mercy on, covered us even when we didn't deserve it, while we was in the height of situations, whether it's depression, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's drugs, whether it's a car accident, whatever the case may be. The Most High Yah covered us and kept us from the worst case scenario. A lot of things he protected us from, people didn't survive. So every day we should be celebrating the Pasach, or that judgment being passed over, and we were allotted another opportunity to get it right with him. So with that being said, family, I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we're just going to go ahead and conclude this lesson here. And like I always do with every lesson that I give, I always have to give the blessings that Aaron spoke over the children of Israel. I'm going to read it in English, and I'm also going to read it in ancient Hebrew. This is coming from Numbers chapter 6. This is the blessing. In the church, they call it the benediction. But this is the blessing that Aaron spoke over the children of Israel as they began to disperse. All right. The Lord bless thee. Yah Barak Ka Yahweh. The Lord keep thee. Excuse me. And the Lord keep thee. Wayasham Marak. Lord make Ya'ar Yahweh face shine upon thee. Pana Yah Alayak. Be gracious unto thee. Wayakanak, the Lord lift up, Yasha Yahweh, countenance upon thee, Pa'ad Nayak, Alayak, and give thee peace. Wa Yasham Lak, Shalom. So with that being said, family, peace and blessings to you. I want to speak a final blessing over each one of you guys that are tuning in. You know, and like I always say to anytime I do a teaching, this is based off of Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, as the Most High gave instructions to Moses to encourage the people. He said to the people, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh. He said, these Egyptians that you see here today, you'll never have to deal with them again. These Egyptians, the strongholds, these, the oppression, financial issue that you may be dealing with, bonds, whatever it may be, you don't ever have to deal with this ever again. Ridicule, doubt, whatever it may be, lack of faith. You don't ever have to deal with this again. Yah will fight for you, but you have to hold your peace. You have to hold your peace. Don't complain. You can, but don't. Don't complain. Love you, family. Shalom.